I have the really, really huge pleasure to have this panel here of very diverse, very different actors in the field of regenerative fashion. I would claim at least that you all are already part of that game, even though maybe this is still a very new idea for many parts of the industry. So the title of our panel today is Regenerative Fashion and Design for the Biosphere. And I think also the biosphere aspect, we will touch a little bit what we mean by that. I think also it's a wording that is not really that established yet in the conventional industry. But first of all, to my dear guests here. Lauren Bright from the Biomimicry Institute. You're the founder and principal consultant of Taurus, which is a future-forward research and development project management and strategic business consultancy. Sorry, I'm reading this because it's been a bit long title for me to remember all of it. But most of all, I think what brings you here also is the whole topic of designing for decomposing, which is an initiative you also co-founded, I believe, with the Biomimicry Institute, and you are leading a new project for Western Europe to pilot and demonstrate how textile waste can be returned to Biosphere. So I think you probably can tell us a bit more also about the Biosphere and what it means, how it's defined. Then next I have to my left here, Renana Krebs of Algaeing, CEO and founder. And I think also, we already still know each other a little bit from your graduation time when SMOD was still alive in Berlin, a fashion school that was really pioneering sustainability in fashion. It was at least, I think, I don't know, Europe-wide, possibly. We have one of the original founders here also in the audience, the first master in sustainable fashion and really groundbreaking. And it's always nice to see like how the alumni from these courses are popping up everywhere now in the last couple of years and really bringing in a lot of change. So glad to have you here also, and that we're back into a discussion. And Prakash, or in the full name Chandra Prakash Jha, but I think nearly everybody know you as Prakash. You're basically a serial entrepreneur, I would say, award-winning, best known possibly for your Peace Silk, which also I think is now used by many luxury brands in the world. So you are kind of selling fabrics, but also now you're sitting here because you're very engaged in biodiversity. You have a startup that's called Fashion for Biodiversity, and this is a blockchain-based software solution where we certainly will also be talking about a little bit, and it's all about transparency and the cotton supply chain or natural fiber supply chain in general, and therefore also obviously a really good stakeholder in this regenerative fashion system that we hopefully gonna build. So at the end of the panel, we will try to have a little Q&A depending on what we get in questions from the audience. So you're also welcome to raise questions. But for now, we will just focus on our questions that I have prepared. I think, since our audience is really broad, and also the German, the European fashion and textiles industry, which to certain degrees is a bit more conservative maybe than some of the people in this room here, I think we do have to explain a few things first. So maybe we could kickstart with this thing, the really baseline regenerative agriculture. What does it actually mean for you? Is somebody capable of giving us a relatively short definition of what that is? Looking at you.
Regenerative means.
Can you take your microphone? Because for our online audience, I think it should be on. You just need to hold it close.
Am I audible?
Yes, okay. Perfect. Thank you.
As the name suggests, regeneration, like you, kind of revive the dead soil, and we don't say repair, we say heal, because Earth, our Mother Earth, is already wounded. We wounded our mother, so we have to reheal that. That, I would say in short, it's kind of process. There are multiple things, and all natural, without chemical. We just have to go back what our ancestors informed us about agriculture. We just have to go back a couple of decades or centuries back, and that is the process of regenerating is regenerative agriculture.
think you already also mentioned something very interesting. It's kind of a new concept now, but at the same time it's an ancient concept, where I think also it's an interesting contrast happening there. And I mean, you do have Indian roots, and I think India is one of the countries where really this regenerative agriculture is the furthest worldwide, because there's also still a strong connection to like traditional ways of agriculture. Yeah, do you have anything to add to this, or do you have a different perspective on regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, the only thing that I wanted to say is just kind of reiterating something that Claire said in her opening statement, which is just that it's incredibly contextual and it's very place-based. Thus, it really makes sense to not apply any specific set of practices broadly across different landscapes, but generally understanding what's necessary to build the agronomic recipe of a specific region that would then facilitate the continuous restoration of that ecosystem such that it could eventually become self-sustaining.
Yeah.
This is so true, and I think also I would add that it's also about to understand how it's a part of the supply chain and how we bring the agricultural to be part of a very important part of the supply chain, as this is the first step of the supply chain. So we need to understand how we go back to this material and how we can basically use it for the best, and also to understand how it can also be innovative. So I think it's definitely also what you said, it's also about how we can learn from our past, but also how we can see further and into the future to see how we can make innovation with the past learning. And I think this is basically what will bring us to the next step in the chain.
I think that was very interesting how it said it's part of the really early beginning of any product, at least if we talk about natural fibers, but potentially also about like new generation synthetics in the future, which hopefully also going to be based on like renewable resources more and more, and not on crude oil anymore. But also like, how does that translate? So how's that? If we look into designing for regenerative fashion or for biodiversity, like what is the first steps? Do you have to think differently when you design in that direction, or whoever wants to start?
Yes.
Okay, and where would you start to think differently when you design for biodiversity and for regenerative?
Yeah, well, I just want to say there's a totally different method, at least in my experience, in sourcing farm direct programs, which is what's really necessary to support regenerative practices on specific plots of land. So with that in mind, the way the industry usually sources is in a way where they typically reverse engineer a product. So they say, this product needs to be of these specifications, thus we need to make this type of textile, thus we need these types of yarns, and thus we need these types of fiber specifications. Where in regenerative agriculture, the best way to actually support the farmers and the way that this, and maximizing the uptake of the fiber that comes off a specific plot of land, is to make sure that you're paying for all of the fiber that comes off of that land at a premium, such that the farmers can afford to implement those practices, at least for the period of time that it takes for that plot of land to become self-sustaining. So with that in mind, it disrupts the way that we typically source, because you can really only design products to what the land gives you. So with that in mind, you can do a lot of planning, you can pick your seed varieties, and you can do a lot of the upfront work that it would require to sort of design into what your supply chain can tolerate. But at the same time, you don't really know what the land gives you or what it's going to give you until it gives it to you. So you have to be really agile in your way of working, and you have to build extremely close partnerships all throughout the supply chain from top to bottom. And then there has to be a significantly increased, I would say, amount of accountability and integrity within those supply chain partnerships to make sure that everybody's delivering on the promise of sharing both the risk and reward of integrating into that system.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate. I think at Algaeing, by AlgaLife, we are basically and harness the power of algae, which is renewable microorganism. And I think here, it's, for me, at least, the language is not about product. It's about really to design the raw material, because this is the beginning of everything. I think once we enable the designers, the brand, the manufacturers, a new raw material, they will have a new canvas to start from. And I think for me, it's not about what is the product or how we go to a product, but it's definitely how we go to the raw material and how we go and basically ask the question, who made this material, where did it come from, who is the farmer, and what is, and I think this is basically what we are as a company trying also to let people to ask questions, and this is also what we led them to understand that the product is not just the end jacket or the end chair. It's really about the raw material at the end, and it's definitely the starting point of everything from my perspective, at least.
I would like to add a few things, not just designing, because I know a couple of sustainable designers. They work with biopolymer, but their things are unsold because parallelly somebody's selling something similar for, let's say, 50% cheaper. Here we need holistic change from consumers, government policies where they really have to ban using synthetic, really ban. I would say what's happening now these days is all because of our, dependency on crude oil in fashion. And not to forget, 65% of fashion is all through crude oil. And I don't want to tell you from which country, which is the country, because I'm busy with my new company, I'm tracing origin. So I traced a couple of polyesters, and I found, I don't want to name the country, it's coming, and the origin of crude oil, the best crude oil for polyester, in last 10 years, temperature has gone 4 degrees higher. And that's also responsible for, everything. When you see Sicily, they're also sinking, or, ocean level is going high. Fashion is also responsible. I would just say, we have to have government policies where they really ban, and consumers should have more education. Only designers and brand cannot do everything here. So they have to really invest. There are a lot of cool startups with biopolymer, but they're not getting investment. So holistic change, just design. I know I really would like to design. I would like to have a biopolymer-based thing, but I cannot sell them. That's my perspective.
Well, I guess at the end, a lot of people have to come together. I'm very happy that now more responsibility is given to the companies, but I guess part of the solution must be the companies need then again also communicate more and interact more with the consumers and have a different relationship in the future. So that it's more a co-owned product. The one produces this, the other one uses this. So both have a very high interest in this product that is out there. So maybe this is also part of it. But I thought it was interesting. We heard two different sides of the designing question here, I think. So you basically said we have to reverse at least parts of the process, how we do it now, because we, at least for quite a while, if we change into regenerative agriculture, we don't have the same kind of outcome. We don't have the monoculture. We have the opposite of it. We have a multi-diverse culture on crops of land, and then we have to see what to do with what's coming out of there. Is that kind of part of...
Yeah, to a certain extent. I think when you choose specific seed varieties and you're investing in specific plots of land, you have a certain expectation for what the quality is going to be. So I don't know that I would say it's that varied, but it is enough to require additional thought and design intention. So that's what I would say to that. And actually I have another thing I'd like to piggyback off of what you said, because I know the industry has said, how could we ever replace polyester? Not only is it really inexpensive, but it's a performance product and a performance material. And I can agree with that to some degree, but I also just wanted to note, after a long history in both the outdoor and athletic industries, I think it's important for us to recognize that, cotton is the result of millions of years of evolutionary mastery. And we often take our synthetic materials and we texturize them and we add functional chemistries, we add antimicrobials. We basically treat these textiles in a way such that we are trying to reproduce the inherent quality effects of cotton or wool or other natural fiber systems. So I think it's important to note that, it's not too far-fetched to recognize that natural fiber systems may be able to play a larger role in the fashion world, and that we just haven't been incentivized to investigate that route because petroleum-derived materials are so inexpensive. There's something else I was going to add to that, but I can't remember what it was. So we'll come back to it later.
Well, maybe we can kind of then jump a bit to the next. So now we were talking about designing for biodiversity and regenerative fashion systems. But what does it mean, designing for the biosphere? And anyway, what are we looking at when we talk about biosphere in fashion now? So far, I think people are quite aware. nowadays about cradle to cradle, about circularity concepts, where we always talk about closing loops, where I always thought already, why should we close loops? I thought open loops would be way more practical for like all the things that we have running around. So yeah, can you explain that, since you already founded something that is working for that?
Yeah. It's probably not fully accurate to say that I founded the Design for Decomposition initiative, but I did definitely work on concepting that project. So just a little bit of insight into what that is. The Biomimicry Institute wrote a report where they were answering the question, if the fashion system were to function more like an ecosystem, what would it look like? And this really applies a lot more generally to material flows beyond the fashion system. As you guys know, the materials that we utilize are used in many other industries. But one of the big takeaways from that report in really studying biological systems is that we're missing a really essential piece of any life cycle of a material. So in general, the fashion industry is really good at primary production, it's great at consumption, and we are completely missing decomposition. And decomposition is what makes life possible here. Otherwise, we would have matter piling up in every direction. So with that in mind, and also further study in general of how nature usually has decentralized systems of nutrient recovery, it became really apparent, and this is going to challenge a lot of people's conventional view, and I apologize, but here we are. Yeah, we're basically challenging the concept that there are separate biological and technical loops, which is what the entire industry has bought into for the past many decades, because the reality is nature disperses nutrients, and ultimately everything at some point returns to the biosphere. So with that in mind, what does that mean? And when we're talking about the biosphere, I wouldn't say that I would be the expert in giving what a proper definition of that is, but arguably we can say that we live here on planet Earth, and there are physical laws through which, you know, we have to live and we abide, and there are particular systems in which we have evolved to thrive over the course of many millennia. And with that in mind, we also recognize that, you know, if we reach a tipping point in any of the planetary boundaries, there could be a wide variety of cascading effects that are integrated across, you know, not just climate change, but biodiversity, of water scarcity, et cetera, all of the things that make it possible for us to live and thrive here on Earth. So with that in mind, designing into this new concept, the fact that, you know, we are not apart from nature, but we are actually part of this functioning ecosystem, and eliminating that dualistic view, I think, is an essential part of what it means to design into the biosphere. And yeah, with all of that in mind. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
Well,
that's our view.
I'm also not sure if that question can be answered that quickly in a fully satisfying way. But so biosphere is basically everything. In the classic kind of climate scientist kind of way, it's really the whole system. And well, what you're claiming is, and I would totally agree to, obviously it's just a human idea that there's a technical and there's a biological cycle, because at the end of the day, everything is still that biology that was given, I don't know how many billion years ago. Right, but I think it's a very important comment, or like also a point that, and I think we are in a time obviously where we should be open to really thinking differently, because quite obviously a lot of things how we used to do them are not working so well anymore, and are really bringing a lot of conflict. I'm not just talking about Ukraine now, also I mean the pandemic has shown like how much conflict there is in societies, how much different points of views, and how many of the standard systems don't really work anymore. So I think a new vision is really needed, and I'm super happy if we could be part of creating a new vision. So like working towards a biosphere and thinking more in spheres in generally, instead of kind of loops or linear or whatever, is probably very helpful. The question is just like, okay, how much, you know, how open can we be for this? Because obviously we all are humans, we all have our patterns, and we were used to think in certain ways. But yeah, exactly. I was just go over to you now. So like, how does this work for you? I mean, you have created new materials, or you are creating new materials. So like, are you designing for the biosphere already? Would you say that?
I think this is part of the whole concept of our mission in our company, because I think also as a startup we are basically using as a bridge, you know, between the academic, between the research, and between the brand and the manufacturers. And our role here in this world, in this economy, in this industry, is to enable everyone to see what we need to create better. And here for us, it's basically that as a company, again, for us, we basically want to see how we can do good, but not only for the environment, because it's not relevant for the consumer that we only want to do good for the environment. Because for us, it's all about, we call it like the triple good solution, because it's have to benefit the manufacturers and the brand. They need to see their benefits, the cost benefit. They need to see how we're saving them energy and water and transportation. But together with this, we also need to remember the end users, the consumers, and we also need to bring them an added value as to see how they can have a better quality of materials, how they have a new generation, a new category of product that also benefits their body, not only for the environment. And to end, of course, you know, we need to have a long list of what we do best for the environment, as of course we're saving water and energy, and we're basically helping, you know, to eliminate the world water crisis. But I think at the end, it's something which is more, it's not like a one point. It's definitely something which is all, it's like a chain, it holds all together. So we need to be a part of a bigger picture and to see how, as a company, we basically enable all other companies to do good. And this is basically our role here as a company, to see how our raw materials can basically change the entire industry. So for example, once they're changing their materials into our Algaeing formulation, they can, in a second, they can basically have a new product which is eliminating chemicals and water. So it's basically also to see how we can make their life easier. For example, they don't need to change machinery, they don't need to change manpower. So I think it's not only about good innovation, it's not only about we have an amazing idea, an amazing supply chain, it's also about how we can make it easier for the entire industry to, you know, to help us, to help them in a way at the end of the day.
I'm sure they like to have it easier, so that's I don't think that they will complain. But maybe you have to explain a little bit more than about what you really do, because now you've hinted a few things, but maybe you can let us know a little bit more what is actually your business.
Sure. I mean, so I would say in one sentence, it's definitely, I mean, we are harnessing the power of renewable algae to create an honest, let's say, and a real solution against climate change. And to that end, we are creating formulation. And with this formulation, we can create both fibers and dye stuff with 1% closed loop system. So we have one raw material, but we have two end products with one formulation. And we do not need to change machinery, we do not need to change the manpower. And it's something for us, it's really, our vision was definitely to be the enabler for the companies, to really work to the wide of the industry, to enable everyone to be a part of this solution, and to make it, at the end, to make it easier for them to do good for our planet at the end.
What you mentioned just a 1% closed loop? I didn't.
100% closed
100%.
system,
Okay,
and it starts with the raw material, the algae closed in a bioreactor in a closed loop with only recycled water, solar energy. So I think it's not about, again, I think every step of the supply chain needs to be closing or opening the loop, depending on your definition on that. But I think it's really about to understand what is the raw material. What, for example, when we go to a movie, we also see the names of the actors and the director. We know always when we go to the supermarket, we know what we have on our plate and what is the origin of the material and the food. And I think also here in this industry, we need to bring it there. We need to understand what is the raw material, how much water do we need to use it, and then we have also a better choices for the consumers. And I think it's not a one player to make the change. It's not about the brands to make the change by themselves. It's not about the consumer. It's really about everyone together, not to mention regulations and government decision. But I think it's something that we all need to be a part of, which is bigger than one specific to be decided. But yeah, this is... overall.
I think that helped quite a lot already to understand your background more and also what you're bringing in here as potential solution, obviously, also for the industry. I think you perfectly also gave me like an entry to talk to Prakash again, because what you just said about transparency, kind of what, well, we have in so many other industries about like who made a movie or what is in my food, even though I would argue also the food industry also has some transparency problems maybe here and there. You are bringing in solutions now for the supply chain, really, and I think that is maybe not your technique is not regenerative in itself, but obviously you're providing logistic and transparency services that are unmatched until now, I believe. So maybe you can let us know a little bit how you could help the industry to get into the regenerative agriculture and fashion systems.
It's a very, very good question. So the thing is, in my new startup, education or information to end consumer and also to brand is very important. So we spend a lot of time in telling, like, you just don't ask like tier 1 supplier that you need a paper transaction certificate, you need proof, and which is now what I have heard in many countries, there are law coming where you really need proof-based traceability. And I worked on many softwares like traceability, and they start from like Fiverr stage. So you have no access to know from where raw materials are coming, and till the time you don't know what was its impact on our environment, biodiversity, you are ignored, or you say naive, I would say. So in my company, we are introducing circular traceability, which is open. It's not a closed loop, where we start with raw material production, maybe pre-seed also, we would say, like before seeds coming in soil, through artificial intelligence, we'll know everything about the soil, if they have carbon presence, everything. We have our own IoT, which is giving us information every 15 minutes. If there are like secret use of chemicals or something, we are giving extreme traceability here. And brands can also go like 5 years back or 6 years back, like what was this land use ratio, thanks to all the satellites now. That's the whole thing. Like we give brands really proof-based location. Hey, this was the origin of your wool. Here your sheep were there. And this was the oil well where your polyester comes. This was the cotton field where your T-shirt comes. So when Fashion Revolution Day is coming, and when they will ask who made my T-shirt, I say, ask who was my farmer. So we will have an answer for that. And when you see if farmer is happy, or if things are exactly the same way it was explained on a brand's website, that they are sustainable or something, brands and customer will have more trust on this fashion revolution, what we are talking about, organic or sustainable or circular. So that is what we give, like complete transparency. And also, like we talk about this biosphere. If you don't know how your land is treated to get this cotton, for example, or how this complete rainforest was chopped for our viscose. If you don't know all these things, you're naive. So we give complete traceability. We'll say also viscose, okay, from this rainforest or monoculture, you are getting your viscose. So that is our contribution to explain about Biosphere and also about regenerative. Then we also have education plan. We include farmers in our program. We are making kind of social media for farmers or growers where they can join us. 3 years of conversion program where we teach them. We have collaboration with some German and Indian universities where we are teaching farmers who are till now conventional. We are telling them what is regenerative, what is the financial benefit, and how you can contribute to a better earth for future.
Wow, that also sounds very progressive. I think just to maybe really keep that or to clarify that, so you're basing your work or your new startup is based on satellite data to analyze the ground, and you can even look back into the past through the satellite data for like certain areas to know what was growing there before. You have like an IoT devices that are on the ground. So, but then you cooperate with the farmers, so they allow you to put it on the ground, I guess?
Brands, actually. Brands they need,
brands?
a lot of brands, they are already pledging they want extreme traceability, and also for their end clients, that they really want to show that from where cotton is coming, or viscose is coming, or wool, anything. Brands, they have to agree on that.
But so you're combining like, okay, satellite data with still on-the-ground work, but you're not auditing in a classic way, but you're still visiting the farmers? Or?
Right, we visit that. That's very classic because that's also part of education. But our auditors, they are not making any data there. So auditors are going with a special drone, which will...
A drone?
Drone.
Oh, it's like a
yes. So there are many things because there are still... in India, for example, or in South Asia, chemicals for agriculture are known as medicine. So if there's some issue, they all say, hey, just use this medicine. This will heal you. Actually, it's not healing, it's destroying our soil. So, for example, drone can really help in detecting pests. And also we have special photosynthesis sensors, which can really detect if farmer is using secretly some pesticide or something. It can detect that also.
Well, okay. Well, that's also stepping up the game, I would say, and maybe even making life for some parts of the industry easier. So super interesting. And could you also do that for algae?
It was my next question, actually.
We are already doing for some recycling companies. One of the French recycling company, they also want, because they get sometimes fibers from unknown sources. So we are helping them as well. And algae is a natural product. Why not?
So we will talk after.
Yes. Deal.
Yeah, I just had one more thing that I wanted to add to that because it hasn't come up in conversation yet. But since you're talking about on-field monitoring or, a proxy for that, I just think it's important to note the intersection of food and fiber systems because the reality is the lands in which our cotton or other natural fibers are grown are rotational lands. So it's really interesting. I mean, there's been a huge craze the past many years to get more organic fields around the globe and being able to have that sort of marketing prowess as, a leader in organic for different brands. But, that is soon to be what's happening in the regenerative cotton or regenerative materials space. And, there's been a lot of brands who are asking for that, but they don't understand the implications of that at scale. So for any land where cotton is being grown through regenerative practices, you also have to have a buyer for regenerative tomatoes and basil and whatever else may rotate through that land. So you have to think as a brand, if you want to incentivize these practices, how do we start building into other marketplaces to make sure that there's somebody to uptake that, the other products that are produced off of that land to make sure that those practices are implemented season over season, year after year, because that's the only way that you're actually going to get those net carbon sequestration benefits.
I would like to add that's for our audience, like what is organic? Here comes the difference between organic and regenerative. In the name of organic, last year a lot of monoculture had happened. On the paper they are organic because they don't use chemical. But when you don't have this rotation or parallel crop, in 2 years is again fruitless. You again need zinc or phosphate, or you need a different kind of urea. So we are doing a research or a pilot project for regenerative flax for linen, and we have combined that with lychee plantation. And parallelly, we are also doing, I was thinking German, potatoes.
Potatoes. The German potatoes.
I was about to say Kartoffel, Kartoffel, So here, potatoes gives a kind of food security to the farmer because they have to buy. With regenerative, they don't have to buy. They can have their own. They can try any other thing as well. And that's the beauty of regenerative. You can have multiple things where farmers kind of empower. We can give them empowerment. Like they are dependent on their own field. They can grow everything. They don't have to buy and save a lot of money by not buying chemical, and they're not buying things from outside.
Yeah.
And what about material which we do not need to have the land to use? For example, it could be algae, but it could be also other material. But maybe what to think about the next generation of vertical farming, about how we can use less land and then to use other land to grow other material. I think it's also about the question of the raw material, and I think it's also interesting for me always, to see what is the next materials and what is the next generation of materials we're going to use. And I think maybe it's the time to start thinking about beyond using land to grow those materials, and we can find some very interesting solutions already out there. I think it's about perspective and about starting to, to look around in the whole 360-degree for this specific.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of really innovative technology out there already. I mean, there's startups that are working on getting water out of the air, really, and things like that. So a lot of groundbreaking things are about to come. But I mean, this is, I think, one of the big questions always. I mean, apparently we have not even 10 years anymore to keep having a more or less comfortable life on this planet. So we will be quick enough to bring these innovations really into scale. I think this is maybe one of the biggest questions in the room always, and who is able to finance that, and who is going to invest in that.
But I think it's a very important topic, investment, because I think when we just started 2016, it was okay. It's a nice idea. It's interesting, and we only received. Basically, we didn't had any investor. We only received funds and prizes. But now, at 2022, there is too many investors. I think right now it's the right. I think already it's a bit too late, but still, we see now that the ecosystem already understood. So it's out there. There is so many investors seeking to invest in the next solution. I think now it's also about profitability and other topic that we need to make sure it's workable and it's scalable. But I think it's also, we see, I mean, as a company that grows through the last year, we see how the ecosystem completely changed from the brand and the investors. So I think it's, again, there is huge change and it's there. We do not need to explain anymore what is sustainability. They just seeking to use anything we have. So it's, I mean, I'm very optimistic at the end of the day when we talk about the brands, manufacturers and investors out there.
Great. Yeah, I think I share the same kind of hope and inspiration. I think it's the standard thing that investors nowadays call the CSR departments to check if they would if the companies run properly, etc. So yeah, I think everything is going in a much better direction. Well, we'll see. We have a few years left, so let's all join forces.
Can I make one comment about that?
Yes, please.
Not to be doom and gloom, but I think it's important to understand the sense of urgency around this, because depending on if you're working in fast fashion or other footwear and apparel product creation cycles, 10 years is actually a really short period of time, because that's only a few product creation cycles away from production. So if we don't have adoption of these new materials or new ways of working sooner rather than later, we're missing the boat in a significant way. So I just think it's important to bring that to light, is that, people have been working on solutions for many, many years, but implementation needs to start now, and there needs to be commitment across the industry to maybe do some of that before it is at whatever we consider to be its perfect commercial state. Because we've got to start that transition, and we've got to start our new ways of working and our new, supply chain relationships. All of that stuff has to happen now for that 10-year goal to be met.
Yeah, I think, perfectly well formulated. And I think the secret will be the urgency combined, but with a clear mind, and also still, obviously, I don't know, what I'm missing all the time is really positive visions. The idea of 1.5 degree or 2 degrees and the scenario around it is just not very attractive, I must say. It might be realistic, but I think it would be helpful if we create different kind of scenarios. And I think fashion can help a lot, because fashion is a storytelling industry, and fashion has always been inspiring. So I think this is also one of the reasons why fashion may play a really important role in changing societies and transforming to a regenerative kind of economy. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to kind of finish with this yet. I just wanted to kind of wrap up your comment, which was very important, and see if we have any questions from the audience. I didn't get any questions forwarded to me digitally, but maybe there's somebody here in the audience who has a question. Or are we a shy German audience again? Well, people, there we have somebody. We have a microphone coming to you, I believe.
Hi, this has been extremely interesting, and I'm so happy to be here. I guess one of my main questions is, as an American and coming over here and learning everything over here, I guess my biggest question or worry is, how do we bring everything that we're learning in Asia and Europe back to America? Like, just, I feel like we're a little bit behind back there, just from my perspective. I worked in New York for a couple of years. I just feel like it wasn't, this conversation wasn't happening. So then I came over here, and it's just so fascinating to hear it being so dominant. So I guess I just wondering your perspectives or ideas, or if there's something actually happening in the US, or you guys are looking into US market or something. So yeah.
As the resident American, I'm happy to address that. I think you would be surprised for the number of things that are actually happening in that space now. I can agree with you. It has been painful. But that stated, Europe usually leads and America follows when it comes to this across a broad range of sectors, not just fashion. And there are a lot of things that are happening. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff happening in policy over here in Europe. EPR is something that's soon to be implemented. I know California is already considering that and actually tapping into European resources to see how they were able to achieve that within this climate. So, yeah, I think it's coming, and the disruption of the global supply chain is making it ever more interesting to American brands in particular. And I would say not that it is necessarily for all the right reasons, but in the interest of fiber security, right? Like, our businesses and business models are irrelevant unless we have access to fiber. And on top of access to fiber, we need production scenarios that are viable to create our product and then send them to the global market. And right now, the volatility that has come through the course of COVID and just the other sort of global ecosystem impacts associated with climate change are making that transition maybe happen a lot faster than the US market would have originally pursued it on their own. So
I would like to add, congratulations to New York. They have recently passed this Fashion Act. So, ray of hope for other, you are a federal state, so other states should also follow.
And just to remind, I think that it all starts from in somewhere. It never goes to the mainstream directly, but we already see some change starting. So wait a bit, and I'm sure we'll already see in the next collection some already actually exist, but I think it's on the way.
Even the past 2 years, since I've kind of, sorry, that was loud enough. Even just the past 2 years, or just moving here the last year, I have seen a lot of change in America. So it was kind of funny that as soon as I left, I felt like there was the change, but I still feel like we have a lot to do. So I just kind of wanted to hear your guys' opinion about that. So thank you.
But I think maybe the last thing to add, let's do it together. Let's see how we can work together once again. I think anyway, it's a good time to kind of reinvest into American, European, and also further partnerships. I think there's a lot of common interest, and maybe we can kind of, get that more into the game again. So we're nearly at the end. This was also for me very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I would like to wrap up with having each of you give us one last statement, obviously onto this topic, if that is all right with you. And the main question I would like to ask you is what, from your perspective, are the key elements for a regenerative fashion system?
Well, I can start. I think it's for us, as a company at Algaeing, it's very important for us to know who we are working with, and it's all about collaboration and partners. And I think for us, it's really to choose the right partners to make it happen. And at the end, again, it's all about to bring and to enable everyone to be a part of this solution. It's about to bring the right solution for the B2B and the manufacturer and the brand. It's really about the value that we need to bring for the end user to buy those products. And also it's about what we are saving or how we helping and help to heal. And I like this, actually, I will use it from now on, how we can heal our environment and our planet. And I think it's something which is, again, we need to work together, as you just mentioned, but it's not only for the sake of saying that. It's really about to choose the partner for long-term relationships. It's about, to appreciate the one that doing the work for you. It's about the workers that are creating those governments. It's about
Hi, ich bin für den Tech-Check hier.
In those really, really giant puzzle. And again, I think as I will talk as a company, for us, it's really about for us to be the kind of glue that we want to bring everyone together to have the one goal to make this change in this planet. So we're really trying to make it happen with all of our great partners.
Thank you.
I would like to end my time here with something which is not very pleasant. As per data, like in next 60 years, we don't have fertile land. Next war will be not for water, but will be for soil. So my last sentence is that let's go regenerative or die.
Okay, ich melde mich dann wieder ab.
Well,
Weiß nicht, ob
and
jemand noch
Lauren,
mithalten möchte.
what cheerfully could you add to that now?
Oh, goodness. Honestly, I don't know. But I would just say I think the interesting part of regenerative systems, once again, is that they're so contextual. So I think, starting in these smaller spaces and building models that are, become broadly applicable in a variety of contexts is a way to move forward. And yeah, just in general, though, thinking about how these smaller models do have more systemic impacts. So being able, I do think it's a skill to be able to both zoom out and understand the systems view while also being able to tie into what's happening within the context of a specific marketplace or within a specific region. And it's going to require both to effectively implement regenerative systems. So that's all I have.
That was very good, I would say. Thanks a lot, my dear panelists. It was a pleasure having you, and I hope this will be repeated in one or the other way. And yeah, we'll continue in our program. Thanks.
Thank you for the pleasure.